There are 7 states today that have laws in their state constitutions banning atheists from holding public office. They were written at a time when it was widely believed that atheists could not be trusted to be good citizens in a democracy. Now, before you start leaving angry comments, none of them are enforceable. I know that. Stop it with your corrections. If you are an atheist, you can absolutely run for office in those states. Winning is another question entirely, but it is theoretically plausible. And if you win, yes, you get to take office, and these laws cannot stop you. And all of that is because of a Supreme Court decision that nullifies all those bans. I'll talk more about that case in just a minute. But those bans were real, even if they are no longer in effect today. The bigotry is right there in writing. Let's go through them just in case you have any doubts. And I want to repeat, these are not old versions of the state constitutions. These are the current ones. Maryland, Article 37. No religious test ought ever to be required as a qualification for any office of profit or trust in this state other than a declaration of belief in the existence of God. If you can run for office, take a step forward. Not so fast, atheists. Arkansas, Article 19, Section 1. No person who denies the being of a god shall hold any office in the civil departments of this state, nor be competent to testify as a witness in any court. We can't even be witnesses in Arkansas. Damn. Mississippi, Article 14, Section 265. No person who denies the existence of a supreme being shall hold any office in this state. Well, guess what, Mississippi? I'm okay with Christians taking full responsibility for you. North Carolina, Article 6, Section 8. The following persons shall be disqualified for office. First, any person who shall deny the being of Almighty God. We are first on the list. You know who else is on that list? People who commit treason. South Carolina, Article 17, Section 4. No person who denies the existence of a supreme being shall hold any office under this Constitution. True story. An atheist named Herb Silverman put that clause to the test by running for governor of South Carolina in 1990. His campaign slogan, "The candidate without a prayer." He lost. Tennessee, Article 9, Section 2. No person who denies the being of God or a future state of rewards and punishments shall hold any office in the civil department of this state. You have to believe in all the irrational things, including an afterlife that includes eternal torture as a possibility, or else we can't trust you. Texas, Article 1, Section 4. No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust in this state, nor shall anyone be excluded from holding office on account of his religious sentiments, provided he acknowledge the existence of a supreme being. Everything is bigger in Texas, even the bigotry. So there you have it. Those are the 7 states where the constitutions still say atheists can't get elected, as opposed to all the other states where it's legal but still damn near impossible to get elected. I should add that Pennsylvania's constitution also includes a clause that says religious people cannot be disqualified, which is also weird, but notice they don't extend that same rule to atheists. So it's not explicitly anti-atheist, but, we get the hint, Pennsylvania. Now, you might think all of those 7 are illegal because our Constitution prohibits any religious test for public office. As the saying goes, the word religion appears 2 times in the Constitution, and both times it's preceded by the word no. I mean, you can't have no religious test and then say, Well, okay, there's kind of one test. But these laws against atheists were only officially, judicially deemed irrelevant in 1961. The governor of Maryland had appointed a guy named Ray Torcaso as a notary public. As I mentioned earlier, Maryland required public officials to believe in God, and Torcaso was an open atheist. So the state revoked his appointment. Torcaso sued and lost. And then he appealed and lost. Those judges even said their ruling wasn't a big deal because, it's not like he had to hold public office, as if that was a legitimate excuse for their bigotry. Torcaso then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they decided unanimously that Maryland's law was illegal. Because of course it's illegal. You can't just exclude a group of Americans from running for office or holding public office on the basis of their religious views. Now, here's the thing, and this is where there's some confusion on the issue. I'm looking at you, Reddit atheism. Just because the Supreme Court says something in a state law is illegal doesn't mean the Supreme Court gets to pour whiteout on those states' constitutions. It's not like those lines suddenly get deleted when a decision comes down. It just means those laws can't apply anymore. They're like vestigial organs in our bodies. They exist, but they serve no real purpose anymore. So every now and then, I will see articles or posts or videos saying something like, "Did you know 7 states ban atheists from holding public office?" Which is not true. No one is saying that. Stop it. No state bans atheists from holding public office. Not anymore. But 7 states have this archaic, now illegal wording still on the books. That's the distinction we have to make. It's really up to those individual states to decide if they want to modernize their constitutions to get rid of the old stuff that no longer applies and isn't going to get overturned. But that is so much easier said than done, because it's really hard to change any constitution. In Tennessee, for example, lawmakers have to pass a resolution over 2 consecutive legislative sessions to make a change. And then voters need to approve that change in a future election. Every state is different, but my point is there are lots of hurdles, and it could take years. And many of those states I just mentioned are very, very Republican. So they are in no rush to spend any effort trying to clean up their constitution to destigmatize atheism. They're fine with just leaving those lines in place. I mean, hey, you never know. Maybe the new Supreme Court will one day say it's okay to put those bans back in place. Who knows? I also think it's important to point out that this stuff is not all ancient history either. I mentioned Herb Silverman's run for governor of South Carolina in 1990, but in 2009, a man named Cecil Bothwell was elected to the city council in Asheville, North Carolina. And some people threatened to sue the city because North Carolina has one of those no atheists in public office laws. They had no legal case here, and they eventually decided not to sue because even they must have realized they had no path to victory. But the fact that Bothwell's legitimate election was even in question shows you how religious conservatives will still point to these passages if they think it'll help them, no matter what the laws are. It's the same reason they'll point to anti-gay rules in Deuteronomy as if they matter, while ignoring all the other rules in the same book. By the way, in 2014, the New York Times covered an effort by one group to overturn these anti-atheist passages, or at least publicize them in order to raise everyone's consciousness about them. And that story ended with this incredible quotation from a Republican who explained why he was in no rush to get rid of the anti-atheist passage in his state's constitution. Christopher B. Schenck, the Republican minority whip in the Maryland Senate, said that while he believed in pluralism, I think what they want is an affirmation that the people of the state of Maryland don't care about the Christian faith. And that is a little offensive. He blamed atheists. He blamed us for his state's bigotry against us. He said this move to make the law religiously neutral was an attack on the Christian faith. It just shows you how religious privilege works. You know, when you're so used to being in a position of power, neutrality can feel like persecution. But think about what he said there for a bit. Imagine if these constitutions said black people cannot hold public office, or Jewish people cannot hold public office. Those laws would be horrible. They would obviously be illegal. More importantly, you can imagine that politicians of both major parties, work with me here, would be rushing to be first in line to sponsor a bill to get rid of those awful sections of their constitutions. They would be making speeches about how those relics of the past deserve to go into the dustbin of history. And yet, for atheists today, no rush. It's fine. Because it's still socially acceptable to have anti-atheist bigotry in writing, in the law, even if it doesn't have any legal teeth anymore. And that is really the problem anyone should have with it. Those 7 states are perpetuating anti-atheist stigma, whether it's intentional or not, even if the people in office today have nothing to do with it. Their constitutions are sending a message to citizens that there is something wrong with people who don't believe in a God. Don't think that sort of message is innocuous. Every 4 years, the polling organization Gallup asks people if they would consider voting for someone from their own political party for president if that person were a blank. And in 2019, atheist was almost at the bottom of the list. It was higher than it's been in the past, with 60% of Americans saying they would not care, but it's only 60%. That's partly the result of decades and decades of anti-atheist propaganda and church leaders telling people you cannot be moral without God in your life. Now let's execute some prisoners and force women to give birth against their will and go vote for Donald Trump like good moral people. I genuinely think a lot of politicians, certainly Democrats, would like to clear up those passages. But they fear that saying that out loud would lead to a lot of attacks from conservative Christians who might lash out and complain about it and call it an attack on Jesus somehow. But it is telling how little atheists mean to those politicians that virtually none of them are even trying to eliminate those passages. I guess if there's any silver lining to this, it's that we have a very visible reminder of the kind of bigotry atheists face. There are laws that could theoretically be enforced if not for a Supreme Court decision 60-some years ago. But you know what would start changing the conversation about these bans even more than trying to get them out of the constitutions permanently? Just getting more open atheists elected to office. Not even state or federal office, but city council, school board, dog catcher, I don't know, anything. If you care about this stuff, seriously consider running for something. Don't run to promote atheism, but run because you're an atheist who wants to make this world a better place for everyone.